Well, welcome everyone. We're so happy to have you. I'm Alyssa. I'm the marketing director at CrowdPass. We are an event tech platform with powered by NFC RFID technology. Um, I've been following Liz on LinkedIn for a few months now, and I noticed her content about attendee engagement and going above and beyond to create a really unique experience for her attendees. And I reached out and we started chatting about wearables and how that influences behavior at conferences, festivals, and live events. And and her ideas, I was like, this would be great for people who have really like not used them before or need some ideas around it. So I invited her here today to chat through some topics for that. And yeah, Liz, if you want to just introduce yourself real quick and we'll get into it.
Sure. Well, my name's Liz Lathan, and I'm co-founder of Club Ichi, a private membership club for B2B event marketers. My background is mostly corporate, but a little bit of association events, conferences, third-party trade shows, all those fun things. I have used wearables at some of our conferences, and I am an avid connoisseur of experiencing wearables when I go to other conferences. But mostly, I just don't like boring things. And so whenever we can do something that's going to add engagement, then I definitely want to play with it. So technology and little flashy things, I like to call it LBL technology, little blinking light technology is always super fun. So let's see how we can do some of that to get together.
Amazing. Okay, so let's get into it. So, as an event attendee engagement specialist, what psychological triggers are you looking to activate at an event, and how would you incorporate those wearables?
Okay, so I want to start out with you guys have all heard me talk about this before, but our three types of engagement, because generally when you start down this path of wearables and somebody has told you that they want to do it, or you've seen it somewhere and you think it's really cool and you're like, well, it's going to add engagement to my event. The question is, what kind of engagement are you trying to add? So I divide them into three categories: cognitive, behavioral, and emotional engagement. So cognitive engagement is trying to stimulate the brain. People want to learn something. People are actively hoping to leave having become smarter than when they got there. Behavioral engagement is getting people to do something, whether it's posting on social media or you capturing them as a lead so that you can follow up with them, but getting them to do things. And then, of course, emotional engagement is that feeling. And a lot of times with wearables, it can be that feeling of belonging. So thinking about the smart badges. So I will say, Alyssa, I'm not a huge fan of these things because I sometimes feel like I'm wearing an albatross around my neck and it's very super heavy. But I love the idea of those networking ones that, like, if you put in some topics that you're interested in and they kind of light up as you get closer to other people, that's a little bit of the behavioral and emotional connection piece. I think the wristbands we all saw on the Super Bowl, or we've seen at the Taylor Swift concerts, how when they all get programmed to do something at the same time, it drives that sense of belonging. Everyone's there together. We're all doing a thing together. And so that emotional engagement, I think, is super fun and cool. And I think it comes down to the brain science chemicals around happiness and togetherness. It's a dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. And I think wearables are a really good way to bring all of that together and kind of give you, as the acronym says, the dose that you need of the psychological safety and togetherness.
Oh, I love the dose part of that. That's great. And yeah, I think it's helpful. I'll touch on we gamify events as
Mhm.
well. We use we have a reader, a crowd reader, where you can tap, and with your wearable that's assigned to your profile and your email, you can tap into that and receive information right from there. So it's all connecting. It's helping you do post comms during event and after the event. So
And are those like these little ones? Is it this
yeah.
simple? That's the thing
The
that taps.
NFC
And
chip in
so
there.
you
Yeah.
just install a reader wherever you want it and people can
hmm
just tap and go, right?
Yep, exactly. Cool. Okay, so is there an example where behavioral engagement through wearables can drive action?
Yes. So I think, we just talked about the idea of getting people to get content. So this is the way that we've used them before at a trade show booth. Instead of, all the paper, the brochures, most people have gone away from that anyway, but having those readers at different demo stations so that you can go around and tap the ones that you're interested in. And now you're getting the downloads of the information sent to your profile or whatever briefcase they've set up for you, or it goes to your app or something along those lines. And as an exhibitor, we know exactly the demos that those people were interested interested in. So back in the olden days when we used to scan a badge and then look at our reader and go, now what topics are you interested in? And that's the way we would qualify them. This way it lets the attendees qualify themselves. So I think that's that frictionless engagement thing that feels less salesy, but totally gives you all the sales metrics. And then I think the other one that we often overlook, we think about wearables in the health sector. We all have the Fitbits and the things like that, but now pair that with events. Like you've seen them at IMEX and some of the other industry events where they have the step challenge and you can get the competition going and get people to kind of create their own step challenge teams while you're walking around Las Vegas. But these types of wearables that can be added in to again, create belonging, but also have another purpose, which is the wellness piece. And then maybe the gamification. You're giving prizes to the team that walked the most from MGM to the Bellagio or whatever.
Totally. Yeah. You walk a lot in Vegas. I've definitely done that route a bunch. I think too, speaking to the fact that we don't like a good technology just exists. You've mentioned that before, where if people are walking away from an event, they're not necessarily even chatting about it. They're just like, everything was so seamless. I didn't even notice that I had all of this access to data and information. And that's how we are hoping that the wearables integrate with events.
Mhm.
Awesome. So getting into a bit of the actual like aspects of the wearables. So how do elements like haptic feedback or synchronized lights and real-time gamification enhance participation?
Yeah, so I think I was at Canva Create last year and they did, you may have heard of the enterprise wrap they did. It went super crazy famous, but they had wearables in the back of every seat that you could put on. And so the way that they did their keynote was the executives getting in this fake elevator and all the lights changed as they went to the next floor to talk to people about their solutions. And the floors were color coded. And so everybody's wearable changed color as the executives went to the next floor. And so again, it was just kind of this seamless integration of the room changing the lighting while the main stage was changing it too. And it felt really fun and engaging. And whatever ones they used were way bigger than this. They were like freaking ginormous. So these are really awesome, by the way. But the haptic feedback I think is interesting. The buzzing or whatever. So if you imagine you set up your keynote to be kind of like the audience is like a live studio audience on a TV stream or a live stream or a TV show. So at that moment where you want the audience to laugh or to applaud or something, and you can send out the pulse and people know, hey, when it buzzes, this is where we want everyone to applause, you know? And so instead of that big applause sign in the old days, you'd be like, oh, and now everybody gets to do something. I think those are really fun ways to kind of send a message out to people and have that engagement happen. And you don't see that very often. It's very memorable.
Really cool. Yeah, that's awesome. I know like with cashless bars and things like that, with, using that and having and just knowing that I don't really have to think about that and having that haptic feedback and knowing that it went through, like that's really
Yeah.
nice. And
And
they
it drives so much more in sales. Like think about Disney. The moment they instituted the wearables so that your credit card was attached to your wristband, I think they got like an extra $40 million a day from people just buying more stuff
yeah.
without thinking about it. And then you don't see the bill until you get home next month and the credit card bill arrives and you
Right.
go, wow, we spent
Yeah.
100 grand on Tuesday.
If my nephew got a hold of one of those wearables at Disneyland, it would be over. He would just be everywhere with it. Um, awesome. Okay,
So
so
now there's a question in the chat about for the trade show readers, what do they look like for the exhibitor to arrange? So the trade show doesn't have wearables. Can a single exhibitor do a version of this? And I know from my experience, yes. So the way that we had done it was in our own booth. So we had that little check-in station at the corner where you're going to welcome people. And it was really like your journey starts here. So we could check people in and have them fill out the little form. And then we could assign the reader to them, the little wristband to them. And so now they have the opportunity to go through the journey of the booth that we had set up for them. And so they could talk to people, or they could just tap and go through it. And then we got all the metrics, we got all the info, and it wasn't at all related to what the rest of the show was doing.
awesome. That's exactly right. And we actually have a reader that is the
Oh,
CrowdPass
cool.
crowd reader. So it functions the same way as what you were just talking about. It can do access control and send comms and everything once you use your NFC band and tap into it. So this can be mounted on anything. Sorry, it keeps getting it's blurry, but it's here and it's super light. You can affix it to anything. So if you wanted to have one of these at your booth and engage with that, you could sync it to whatever wearable that you have. right at your booth. So we
And
have,
these, I mean, I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but there's like from a pricing perspective, they're not super, like they're not really hefty and they're not super
right.
crazy expensive. And then this one actually has it built in as well,
Yeah,
right?
that
So
has
you
the
can,
NFC chip in it. So yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Yep. So you'll actually scan right here at the top of it, and you can have your whatever link out to your Instagram, LinkedIn, or your contact card so that you can share and do lead retrieval that way as well.
Oh, now talk to me more about that. So is that like you put an app as an exhibitor on your phone?
Yep. Use the CrowdPass
And then
app,
these
and then yep, exactly.
Interesting. So if I were a show organizer, is that something where I could tell all the exhibitors to install the app and then we are giving all of the attendees this thing and then that is how they could possibly
You can
scan?
do lead retrieval and network. Yep.
I love that. Okay.
Yep. Cool. So we talked about cashless bars. On an emotional level, how can
Actually,
wearables?
let's go back to cashless bars. Can you load in things like a drink ticket to it? Like, could you assign that you've got two drink tickets and then the bartenders are using it?
Yeah, absolutely. You can assign drink tickets, food tokens, merch tokens. So if you have like a VIP guest, you can assign certain amount of merch tokens for them. If they're just GA, they get a little bit like maybe less, and then you don't have to worry about it. They can go in and just use the wearable to get access to their merch, drinks, all of that. Yep.
Okay. And then are these disposable or do you catch them back at the end of the show? How does that work?
They're disposable. Yeah, recyclable PVC plastic.
And then there's a question in the chat about if the wristbands can be traded, transferred, between attendees or something like that. Um, does that matter? Is that a challenge?
I think that that's something I would actually have to ask my team about, but I think we like that's often something that we find as an issue at most events where people just like give their wristbands with
Like
certain
badges,
access
yeah.
to different people. So what we can do is assign the actual NFC like number to the person. And you would check an ID to, get around that. But
Okay.
that's
And if you wanted to limit that, I assume you could do more like smart badge where it's attached
Mhm.
to their badge, put the
Yeah.
NFC in the actual name
Yes.
badge.
hmm
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
Okay, cool. Cool. Yeah, I'm glad we talked about the drink tokens and cashless bar because that's definitely a really cool experience to like not have to think about it and be like, oh, I've got my drink tokens at the bar. I'm just going to run over there and not have,
Right.
figure out where your wallet is. Okay, so on an emotional level, how can wearables create a memorable connection and experience?
Well, we've already talked about kind of the lighting thing, but I think that's a really, really big one. When you have the concert or the keynote or whatever's happening in there and everybody has that moment of just like, wow, things happen, you do feel it. That's a really cool opportunity to bring people together for something. And then party vibe, right? So you can change people's mood by changing the light that's in it. So this thing, you can set it. Now tell me how the settings actually work. So if I were to say I want the entire thing to go green, right? For me, I'm pushing this button and I can change
Yeah.
it. But how does it work for you as the organizer?
Yeah, so it's connected over radio frequency, so it's set at the same frequency as whoever the lighting director is. So it's kind of an extension of your stage to immerse the crowd in what's going on. So the lighting director would be able to control whatever light we want to turn on. It's through like software that we have. But the thing that changes us from just like a regular light up wristband is that it's controllable. So you do get those moments where if you want to say something about something in blue and create that moment, or if there's like a golden hour happening, you change it to, yellow. So it's controllable and it's all synchronized.
How far is the beam like to get people? If you're at a convention center and people are wearing it the whole time, could you like send a color message out?
I mean, we have our own frequency, so it doesn't interfere. And so it's like the same for other people who are using that technology so that it doesn't interfere. I'm not sure exactly how far
Because
it
I just had this
is
vision of like hug time from the trolls where all of a sudden everybody's wristbands turn
with
pink
their
and you're supposed to
bellies.
like do something, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's just on our own frequency to make sure that it only touches the wristbands that are, at that event.
Yeah, okay, okay. That's cool.
Yeah, it's so fun, and the concerts and the events that have them, it really is an exciting moment that like brings people together. So it's fun.
And now
Um,
tell me, we talked about the vibrations from a haptic thing, so like you know that it went through or something happened, but you had mentioned like soft vibrations for like a reflection zone. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, the more maybe you're in a reflection zone and you're meditating, and the more time you spend in there, it like buzzes a little. Like if you're, because we can track like your location if you have the trackers on the floor where your wearables are in there. So it can signify that you've spent time in that reflection zone, like taking a break, doing meditation, or things like that. So,
So it's almost like when your Fitbit would give you the notice, like,
yeah.
congrats, you've done something. So it's a
Hmm.
little
Yeah, because
reward.
we have session tracking, which allows you to know exactly like the foot traffic of who is going into your breakout rooms or booths. Instead of having people sign up who might not show up, you actually have that wearable count and you have that data, so you can go back and be like, okay, this was the actual count in that room, instead of seeing tons of RSVPs and that 30% drop off rate that happens. You don't necessarily know the exact amount, but with the wearable tracking and session tracking, you do.
Yeah, that's really cool. Tell me about the Eco Lab structure that you were talking about. Like it was a welcome experience for people.
Yeah, it was so cool. They wanted to create a welcome moment. So they had this giant star structure that would light up after everybody would enter. And so they had their wristbands that integrated with that had the NFC tech in it. So when they arrived, they were greeted with the structure. And so they would come up and tap the structure, and every time they tapped it, it glowed.
Oh,
So it
that's
was a nice little
cool.
welcome moment. Yeah. Mhm.
I love that idea. How hard is that to technically implement?
Honestly, it's just, it seems big because it was a really big structure, but it's truly just the tech of having an NFC like signal to light up the whatever statue or whatever you want to light up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really cool. And
Yeah.
there's a question in the chat that is going to lead right into what we're talking to next, which is money, 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 right? So for the smaller shows, is it even affordable? Is it even something that we should consider as we're looking into this? So how do we even think about that? Is it like a per person cost, or does it come into more of a different part of your budget, even like an attendee experience part of the budget?
Yeah, I think it's something that we've, everybody's gets a tote bag or gets a pen or something, and it's like we have so many of those. It's like, why not have a moment where it was like, oh, I had the same color as someone who had the same interest as me in this networking event. Like I'm going to remember that more than taking back a logo on a bag. So it's kind of like filtering that into like the attendee budget and thinking of it like your merch or your take home tokens, something like that.
That's an interesting perspective. Is there, I mean, there's obviously a per person cost depending on what you're doing. And does that scale? So if I have a smaller group versus a larger group, then the cost go down?
Yeah, the cost can go down as it gets larger. It's definitely more of like a case by case thing that my sales team is amazing
Of
at, and
course.
we'll be
Yeah.
able to tell you. But yeah, it goes
And
down.
then they're fully brandable, right? Like all these ones
Yes,
that you've sent are from
totally
different
brandable.
conferences
And
and
one of the cool things that we have is called crowd pages, and it's custom landing pages and QR codes. So you can put your QR code on the
that's
wristband,
cool.
and attendees can scan it and they can enter to win contests. We've done it at concerts where they enter to win live watching a show from the side stage. So just it's like halfway through an event when you start running that contest, it re-engages people, and it's a full life cycle branding moment. So you see these the entire, you have this like on your wrist the whole time. So
Yeah.
it's a great way to convert and generate leads throughout the event. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting part about the budget consideration because this is not just a thing you're buying that people will throw away. And we'll talk about the what you do with it afterwards in a second, I think. But a way to capture data and a way to capture meaningful data. So imagine making a trip report for all of the attendees that came because you know the sessions that they went to, you know where they spent the most time, you know what they tap and goad, whatever you have that stuff set up at. And so now you as a company have all of the exact targeted, segmented, perfect information that you can go follow up on. So this is almost more of an investment in the experience and in your future pipeline and revenue than it is a line item of, oh no, it costs too much.
Exactly. Yep. 100%.
So talk to me about that. What do you do afterwards? So you said that they're disposable, but have you seen any examples of people doing cool stuff after? Because you told me not to give it to my child because the light up thing is just going to die in 12 hours and they'll be sad.
So that is one thing that you can remove it and replace the battery. So it is
Oh, fun.
useful in that sense, but we also have a recycling program. So when we have these at trade shows or events, we have a recycling program where people can bring it and put it in. So we have a recycling program as well. Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever seen anybody do fun things with it, like create art or collections or do, because like that's what we could what if. Like, what do you
I
do now that we've got these?
Yeah, I would love. I mean, when I go to events, when I go to music festivals and I notice other people wearing their wristbands for the next like 2 weeks to be like, yeah, I was there. So there's
Yeah.
bragging rights. But but yeah, no, not any that come to mind, but you can take the battery out and replace it so that your kids can see them. Yeah.
That's awesome. New nightlight. I'm picturing like, you know, how everybody collects their name badges and you've got that wall full of every name badge you've ever been to. So if there's something that we can end up doing with all the wristbands too, then we need to do like crowdsourced art for the event
Yeah.
industry or something.
I love that. I think that's a great idea. Yep. Yep. Amazing. Okay, so let's see. Okay, yeah. So you say you have wearables at your event. What do you think is a signal of successful wearable integration?
No, I think like we talked about earlier, it's that you don't notice it or that it enhanced the experience so much that it's being noticed was super cool. Like I said, the one at a conference that I went to before, the wearable was so big, it was just like I hope I don't have to wear it anywhere else. And so
Right.
I noticed it and it was cool and it added the experience we have in the keynote hall and we did not have to take it anywhere else. And so that was fine. But, you know, immediately I started thinking about, was that a good use of money? That seems like something that maybe we shouldn't have done. So when you go to something more like a concert, they're very small, they're these types of things, and the experience is there, and you're keeping it as a keepsake because maybe the concert branded it. And so, like, if you're at a Taylor Swift concert, I'm sure that it's branded for Taylor Swift, right? So you're going to keep that. And even if the light doesn't work anymore, you remember that moment, you took pictures of that moment, and you have this sitting on your bookshelf forever and ever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
remember what the question was.
No, that was perfect. I think that was no, it's truly like we want people to remember the moment, not like the actual thing. Like if it's clunky, if you hear
Oh,
the
that's a great sentence. Write that down. We want to remember the moment, not the tech. I'm putting it in.
yeah, so it, if someone's walking away being like, oh, this wristband wasn't working, like we're like, oh no, we don't want you to, necessarily notice it. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the
Um,
tap and goes, I think that, you know, that measure of success from an attendee perspective is that it registered and it got me the information I cared about. And then from the organizer perspective, it's that it gave me really concrete, usable data that my sales team can activate on, you know, and actually
yeah.
create the pipeline and revenue because we know exactly what people were interested in rather than just that follow-up call. Hey, saw you came to our booth. Who'd you meet
Yeah.
with?
Yeah, I mean, it's especially great when you have like maybe you have a Saturday, Sunday event and you notice on Saturday, like exactly the traffic at XYZ booth and you have all these vendors. And then you're like, okay, on Sunday, we don't necessarily need, we can cut these vendors, we can cut this like access place and like you can already like reduce costs like in the moment. So it's all about like optimizing the future of your event with all of that data.
Let's do like use case things of different ways you could use it. So let's start festival. We're at a fully consumer festival, and not talking about activations, just talking about the music festival itself. So other than lighting up and being really fun, are there other uses like ticket access or tell me how you would use it?
Yeah, CrowdPass offers ticketing. It's totally integrated into the wearable, so we can do RFID access control. So if you have a festival that has different VIP sections, viewing sections, merch, all of that, it can integrate into that and be assigned to a ticket. So yeah, full ticketing access control,
Okay. And then the drink ticketing and stuff like
registration.
that. Yeah.
Yep.
And now take that to I'm a brand and I'm activating there. So can I work with the festival organizers to leverage their tech for stuff in my booth?
So it would be more of if you're a brand using us as your like data collection. So for example, we worked with Amazon Music at Outside Lands to collect data for people that came to their Amazon Music terrace. So we had our wristbands, they were giving out the wristbands and saying tap to enter to win. So using the wristbands, they tapped in, they filled out a survey via crowd pages, and then Amazon Music collected all of that data, and fans got to. We actually increased the dwell time at the Amazon Music terrace by an hour. So with all that foot traffic, and then Amazon Music walked away with over 1,500 leads that they would have otherwise like not had, and then they have all of this data from the surveys. So that would be kind of a use case at a festival with a brand.
Okay, so now let's say I'm a small association. I don't have a huge budget. I have a 300-person annual conference, and it's got an expo hall, all my little 10 by 10s with their pipe and draper out there. I can't afford lead scanning devices for everybody, and our show services aren't offering that. Would NFC be like tap and goes be a solution for my exhibitors?
I think so. I think that would be a great solution, and they could use it via the CrowdPass app to use it as just lead retrieval. Like you could have them, use the wearables and be like, this is the lead retrieval service. All of the attendees registered, they get their wearable on site, and it's already connected to, or you pair it on site with the CrowdPass app. It's all worked through an app, which is, I think, is really cool. Obviously, there's a desktop version, but the pairing works through the phone. And so you could use that as lead retrieval through the wearables on site. Yeah.
And then in this scenario, if I'm an association, I'm likely offering breakout sessions that give CEUs. So now if I actually wanted to know who went into what session to give them the CEUs, they could tap in to prove that they went in, and you could collect that data, right? But it's not tracking their movement. It's just tracking their tap, or is it tracking their movement with readers?
It's well, so there's two use cases. There is session tracking where we have mats that can track who walks in and everything without having to tap in, or you can do the readers and tap in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I feel like that would be a reasonable, cost-effective solution for a smaller event, your overall conference, so you can use it both for lead retrieval and for session tracking. And then if you wanted to go big and you have a great production team, you actually do these instead so that they light up and you kind of sync it and do real production fun things.
Cool. Yeah. Amazing.
I love that. Okay.
Great questions.
So now let's say we're in a big mega conference. So mega huge. We've got 15,000 attendees. Is this in any way cost effective to do this for 15,000 people?
I think so. I think the return on the data that you have, even just for one day of it, I mean, obviously, if you're doing 15,000 people, hopefully it's a multi-day thing. So the insight into what's happening into your event and the accuracy of it, having that is a solid investment, in my opinion, to have all of that data that you can work with and improve upon. And you can do it in real time. Like this is all like event organizers. Like I know we're always watching like who's walked in, like who, like are our VIPs here? Did they make sure that they met the right speaker? Did they get to the guest speaker? Like all of that granular stuff, I think is super worth it, especially if you've already spent, a ton on a 15,000 person event, and then giving, attendees a unique experience. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth it.
I think it's cool from a budgeting perspective that it fits into multiple line items. So it's almost like when you kind of need to tax each of the departments, where you can say, look, it fits into the measurement line item. It fits into the attendee journey line item. And not to say that it fits into swag, but it is like a replacement for some useless throwaway and becomes part of the experience.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. Great question.
Very cool.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I think we're nearing we're wrapping it up, but the last question was how do you approach cost, which is what we were just talking about. And I think we covered, how it wraps into each of those budgets.
And so I think that we just bring that back to the very beginning and decide what kind of engagement you are actually trying to get from the conference. So when the executives are saying this, we just need to make sure that it's more engaging, narrow it down. And are we looking for cognitive, emotional, or behavioral engagement? And then if we're going to look at wearables, that behavioral and cognitive come with the tap and go type of thing. So we want them to be able to access content, and we want to be able to capture if they completed something. And I'm thinking of like polls and quizzes for cognitive engagement. Is there some way for the wearer to give feedback? I guess you could do it as like a tap and go if you had like a hallway activation and you're trying to get information about something and get people to vote on things. You could walk up and tap to give
Yeah.
feedback. Or if you had to take a quiz when you left or something and you had to tap what your answers were.
Exactly. Like we can do that. We have the readers connected to iPads. So if they came through any sort of activation and we wanted to gather that information or we wanted them to vote, they could tap in and submit their form and engage in that way.
Yeah, that's cool. And then the emotional one, I really love that welcome experience that you mentioned. That is really cool. And then, of course, the synchronized lighting and some of those other haptic feedback of the gamification is like that little dopamine hit of you get a reward. Once you've done
Yeah.
something, it kind of buzzes you to be like, "Woo, I did something."
Yeah. We're all about dopamine. um, okay,
So,
great.
question in the chat, if I
Yeah.
wanted to bring the NFCs for attendees that come through my booth, you mentioned preloading them. So, what exactly can we preload on them? And how does the attendee get the information if they've tapped and gone?
Yeah, so we can do SMS texting and email. So if someone taps in, then we can make sure that they are sent those comms.
Awesome. Okay. And then how do you preload information? Is that like from the registration process? You're now almost like a hotel key card gets like attached to them when they check
Yeah,
in?
it would be in the back end to preload that information. So you would have everything you wanted to be on that. And then also if you're doing it in real time, you would input it on the CrowdPass app. You would scan it and like the event manager themselves would put in the data and then
So I'm thinking of the registration process. People are coming up and they are putting in their information because they pre-registered and it comes up. And now me as the person behind the desk is handing them a name badge. And then we're kind of like syncing this to
yes.
them
And then
through
you
the
sync it
scanner.
and it's
So
just like
scan it.
super easy through the phone. Yeah, you can have
Okay.
multiple touch points and we provide the phones, like the iPhone, so that you have the app and it's merely just like scanning it and pairing it and giving them
Beautiful.
yeah.
Perfect. And then is it preloaded information from a website? Oh, do you mean like if they're tapping and going, what they're actually getting? Is that the question?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So yes. The
Yeah,
way
so
that we had done it previously was like at demo stations, it was preloaded either PDFs or infographics or something like that, so that when they tapped, it would go into kind of their digital file and they were able
yeah.
to access a repository of everything they had tapped. Is that how yours works?
Yeah, and it can be emailed as well. So it would be,
Mm-hmm.
preloaded email comms with a link to website or a link to the PDFs.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Awesome.
Samantha,
Mhm. What
cool.
else you got, Alyssa?
Oh my gosh, I honestly, I think those are all of the questions I have. Since we have like a few extra minutes, if there's any other questions in the chat, feel free to ask.
Okay,
Um,
well, while we're waiting on that, I want you to
oh
tell me
yeah.
about this giant albatross. It's like 9,000 pounds. So tell me why this is cool and why I'd want it.
Okay, so that's a light up one. So the tab is
Okay, let's
on
see.
there.
Pull the
Yes,
tab.
and then you can press the button at the top and then it should light up. Um,
Okay, and so tell me why it lights up. What's its purpose?
So yeah, so and this can have NFC in it as well. And you can put QR codes, and then since it's controllable LED, when you distribute these, they're in zones. So if you want to have everybody have a different experience, like say everybody's in a room and you light up one zone with like green, you're like, hey, green, talk
Oh,
to
I
the
love
blue.
that.
Yeah, so that's a use case for it to start networking.
That's worth wearing. So that's a really fun network
Yeah.
thing. And you don't have to do a bracelet and a name badge and all the things. So this, I'm assuming this could be on an actual like name badge with contact
Oh
information because
yeah,
this one's generic
that's a
looking.
completely customizable. You can put anything you would like on it. Yeah.
Okay, so you have a big group, and maybe based on one of your questions in registration is, are you a dog person, cat person, fish person, or
Mhm.
hate all animals? And then you assign them a different color and say, it's networking time, go. And
Yeah.
then you theme out, they all turn into colors. And now there's a puppy party here, and there's a box of kittens with laser pointers here, and there's an aquarium here, and then there's just people here.
And then there's people you need to kick out if they don't like animals. Yeah,
Perfect.
exactly. So that's a great question and use case for the LED badges.
And then access control. So could I tap and then it turns red and tells me that I wasn't registered for that session, or green if I'm allowed to go in?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure on the actual badge, but in the use case of like if you're tapping into the reader, this would flash green or red,
Okay.
based on that. Yeah.
Okay. I love that.
Yeah.
Very cool. And by the
Very
way, it's not as
flexible.
heavy as I thought it was. When you put it on, it's not so bad. But when I picked it up, I was like, oh.
Yeah. Yep.
I love the bracelets though. They're super light. So,
They're
and that's
super
actually a
fun.
question I have for your team because these are really light and this weighs a lot more than this. So, why can't we use this technology on this instead? Can we?
That's a really good idea. I don't know about making the silicone in the badges, but like never say never. I'm going to bring it back to the team and see what we can do. They're so flexible. I've seen them pull off some crazy stuff. So I
Well,
would.
I think the difference that I'm seeing is that it's the batteries. These have like actual physical
Right.
like batteries in them, and I'm guessing these are those little like circle ones.
Yeah.
So
I think
anyway, feedback for the product team.
love it. Thank you for that. Yes. Yes. Amazing.
I love this. Thank you for sending me the box of fun things. This one, I just question for you. It was just a lanyard. Was the lanyard special or is it just a lanyard?
It's a lanyard, but I just want to touch on that CrowdPass. We do custom lanyard printing, badge printing, like all of that. So anything you really need for your conference, as far as lanyards and badges, we offer that as well. So that's just an example. Full
Okay.
color printing, and you can put the QR code on it and connect it to any of the contests that you are inspired to run after this webinar.
Awesome. Do you have a minimum order for these things?
I don't believe so. I think there's no minimum. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Cool.
Awesome. This was so fun, Alyssa. Thanks for
Yes.
having me.
Thank you so much. This was awesome. And I appreciate everybody in the chat who asked questions. We will send you a recording of this so that you can tap in and we'll do some highlights. And hopefully, we're going to do some more. So, thank you so much, Liz. That was awesome. We're so happy to have you. And have a great rest of your day, everyone.